शशांक, थैंक यू. मोनिका जी, थैंक यू. आप ही को थैंक यू बोलूँगा, बाकी अपने लोगों को थैंक यू बोलने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. सो I am here to make a few clarifications and try to rethink the idea of agreement. Why? Because the issues that are covered by Maninji in his introduction, the 5 things which he indicated, are not merely done by him. There are a lot of literature that is coming out on these 5 issues. Yogen Bhai's Ganrajya Ka Swadharm, Maninji's own book Gyan Ki Rajniti, Professor Kaviraj's Bangla book, the English version is nearly coming. It's called Search for Paradise. And Nivedita Menon's book, Secularism as Misdirection. I think we have now, the first point which you made, about recovering the confidence that we can do theory, I think that we are in a process to achieve it. So what I'm going to do basically to have a big canvas and bold strokes, and to talk about agreement, because whenever we say agreement, the opposite to this is disagreement. I'm not going into disagreement. How can we actually rethink the idea of agreement and then expand the scope of it? So in order to save time, and English is not my language, so I'm going to read it out. The title Doing Theory in India underlined 2 distinct yet interrelated issues. The act of theory, a supposedly sophisticated, intellectually sensitive, and inherently all-inclusive exercise that aims to explain complex phenomenon and to create the possibility to think the unthinkable. So that's what theory comes to us. On the other hand, India, often presented to us as a geopolitical context, an evolving civilization, a post-colonial nation, and a democratic republic. Doing theory in India thus may lead to a slightly uncomplicated, overtly positive, intellectually safe, and politically desirable conclusion that the act of theorization should not ignore the contextual dimensions. We all agree on that. In other words, we agree on 2 things. 1, the Western theory in its varied form. Whenever we say Western, we should be very careful that there is no one Western. There are multiplicity of it. Western theory dominates our intellectual discussion. Therefore, there is a need to underline the limit of Western theory by asserting the fact that Indian realities should not be treated merely as case study. To substantiate the universal applicability of Western theory. This is agreement number 1, is based on the premise that theorizing Indian experiences require a context-specific conceptual apparatus and a culturally sensitive mode of doing theory building. Now, agreement number 2. It's about what is called decolonization of theory. There is a huge literature on this subject. The central theme is simply this. Our ideas are still governed by colonial knowledge framework, hence one must strive for what K.C. Bhattacharya calls Swaraj in ideas. While agreeing to this journal observation, I wish to further expand the scope of this discussion by introducing 3 new themes at the end, not now. But before I start, I take a clue from Maninji's presentation. He says that poetry has a great power. So I will actually recite one of the poem by Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, and then I go back to Gandhi and Tagore debate very quickly and conclude. It's a famous poem, Pakshi और बादल. It says, ये भगवान के डाकिये हैं जो एक महादेश से दूसरे महादेश को जाते हैं. हम तो समझ नहीं पाते मगर उनकी लाई चिट्ठियाँ पेड़, पौधे, पानी और पहाड़ बाँचते हैं. हम तो केवल ये आंकते हैं कि एक देश की धरती दूसरे देश को सुगंध भेजती है और वो सौरभ हवा में तैरती हुई पक्षियों की आंखों पर तिरता है और एक देश का भाप, दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट, एक देश का भाप दूसरे देश का पानी बनकर गिरता है. Now this last line and the steam from one country falls as water in another, in my view, is very powerful theoretical statement. This line is very important because it implies that steam, a material outcome, does not remain confined to the geographical boundaries. Instead, it travels like cloud and falls water in another context and country. So, Tagore-Gandhi debate. Now I quickly move to Tagore-Gandhi debate. There are 3 or 4 parts of the debate, but I'm focusing only on one. That is during the time of non-cooperation movement. So Tagore wrote a long essay, first in Bangla and then in English. And I quote that. He says that I feel that true India is an idea, not a mere geographical fact. Is an idea. India will be victorious when this idea wins victory. The idea of Purusham, Mahatam, Aditya Varnam, Tamash Parasta, the infinite personality whose light reveals itself through the obstruction of darkness. Our fight is against this darkness. Our object is the revealment of the light of this infinite personality in ourselves. Gandhi, interestingly, disagrees on many counts with Tagore, but he agrees on this. And he says, I quote Gandhi, I want, and this is a very famous quote from Gandhi, I want a culture of all the lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible, but I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. This is Gandhi's reply while disagreeing with Tagore's questioning the non-cooperation movement. Now this brings us to 3 theses or 3 ideas which I wish like to present. Now the first idea is how to look at India. In my view, and this is something which both Gandhi, I find Gandhi uses the metaphor of sky very creatively. Both Gandhi and Tagore, and in literature you find that sky is something that is always seen as valuable. Now not recently, I think 3 or 5 years ago, there was a book called Monsoon Islam by Sebastian Prince. And he makes this argument that Monsoon Islam, meaning that the ideas of Islam travel from Middle Eastern world to Kerala and to Eastern Asia, and they actually absorb the water coming from these ideas in their various ways. So I like that metaphor. And I suggest that how should we look at India as a site, and I would call it Punya Akash, not Punya Bhumi, because all of these great personalities are not looking down, they are looking up. So it's Punya Akash. Ideas, in my view, travel like moving clouds. They certainly originate in a particular context, respond to a few specific socio-economic and cultural conditions, yet their inner logic push them to move outside. This inner strength provides them a unique philosophical value, a universalism of some kind. This is something what Manbhai just underlined. It would be therefore necessary to pay attention to this multifaceted universalism. Doing theory in India would be meaningless if we ignore the dialogical tradition that evolved historically over the centuries and shaped Indian culture or theorization. This theoretical move may be described as a constant search for a Punya Akash. Now, if this is India, in my view it's Akash, not Bhumi, then what are the sources? I use the term Ekanik. Punya Akash, the second proposal is Ekaek. Again, because the confidence is now coming that we can actually experiment something theoretically. Indian thinking, especially in the realm of modern Indian politics, is based on a strong assertion that India's sociological, religious, linguistic and cultural diversity is not a weakness. It is, on the contrary, a uniqueness that defines India as a nation. We all agree on that. But there are 2 components in this formulation, and we usually ignore the second one. The first is diversity. We all agree that we are a completely diverse country. But there is another thing, that is outcome of the diversity. There is a lot of discussion on the question of diversity. However, the outcome of diversity, which establishes us as a collectivity, a reality of second order, is usually taken for granted. Doing theory in India, I suggest, should be sensitive to this emerging duality that takes away from all forms of parochialism. I call this value anek anek. Now, the final is method. What could be the methodological move to do theory in India? I call it tulnatmakta. India's public life introduces us to some of the most unexplored dynamics of modernity. Our anti-colonial struggle in its entirety not merely evoked nationalism as a cherished goal, but also proposed different possibilities to imagine an egalitarian society. Indian experiments with the idea of democracy have been equally fascinating. These experiences, no doubt, deeply rooted in the Indian context, yet there is a possibility to expand the analytical capacity of this inherently Indian explanation for doing what may be called a comparative theory, or I call it tulnatmakta. So these are the three things which I propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.